Welcome back to another Cardinals Off Day podcast. We're here. I'm Ben Godar. With me, as always, is my good friend Ben Humphrey. Ben, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. The Cardinals appeared to be on the track to getting healthy again, with Donovan and Arenado seemingly nearing their returns to St. Louis right after Alec Burleson has been activated. So poor Oliver Marmol has his work cut out for him, Ben. He has to manage that roster again.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is the case, I suppose. Although I don't know. Who knows? I'm curious to see what these final weeks look like. But Ben, before we look ahead, why don't we take a look back? Since we last got together, what have you learned?
I have learned that I think we are at the beginning of the end of at least one St. Louis Cardinals career, with manager Oliver Marmol and hitting coach Brant Brown launching a broadside on Jordan Walker during Marmol's radio show last week, and calling out his preparation in terms of watching video and the way he's going about his business as a big league hitter. And then Walker's response. At first, it seemed maybe like a calculated maneuver to me, the classic, manager call out or coaching staff call out a player in the media to light a fire underneath him. But listening to Seeing Red this week and Bernie Miklasz, who was in the room, his description of kind of Marmol's facial expression and things of that nature made me think that maybe it wasn't planned. But either way, it seems like once you get into the public criticism area, someone is not going to be around for too much longer. And I kind of get the vibe like maybe all three might not be, too deep into Bloom's tenure as the president of baseball operations. So that is something that kind of caught me by surprise in September of the runway season, where one of the players who is identified as needing a runway is getting called out for preparation. That is an organizational failure, starting with the player, to the hitting coach, to the manager, to the front office. And I cannot wait for a new day to begin for the organization, and hopefully things like this will be fewer and further in between once that day comes.
I think if they start winning again, that will happen. But until that happens, I don't know. We may be stuck with some of these kind of things. Ben, something that I learned, and I think probably our listeners learned as well, is that Masyn Winn's lingering knee issue is actually a torn labrum, and it was surprising, interesting to hear that the plan is for him to keep playing on that. Now, it does sound like everyone involved, including doctors, I guess, have said like, well, you ain't gonna hurt it anymore playing on it, and so they're moving ahead with that. I mean, I don't want to speculate or have any kind of a HIPAA violation. He doesn't work for me, so it's not an issue. But it seems a little odd for someone who's such a franchise type player, cornerstone type player, especially given the state of this organization, that you would kind of keep running them out there in for a few weeks that don't mean anything. But again, I suppose I could be charitable and give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and this really is the case, and he'll have some kind of a procedure on it that won't delay him into next season. But we've definitely seen multiple times with the Astros and the Cubs thing earlier this year, just with Kyle Tucker. We've seen some teams do some pretty head scratching kind of medical things. So fingers crossed that's not what's happening here. But that is what I have learned this week, Ben.
Well, the Cardinals with Tommy Edman, fairly recently, a similar situation where it was oh no, he'll be ready for opening day, and then it was the All-Star break, and he still wasn't.
Yeah, no, that's a good example for sure. So At any rate, we are going to dive into some questions. And thanks again, everybody, for sending us your questions, especially this deep into the season. So let's kick it off with Mink River, who asks impressions of Sagacey. It is a J sound on Sagacey, right? And not Sagacey. I think we've established that. Uh, he's had a lot of playing time recently at multiple positions. Also, a comment on the Cards bullpen. It's been excellent since losing Maton and Helsley. Jojo, O'Brien, Schwanson, Leahy, and even Alcala have been superb. In my opinion, Ali manages them so well. Generally, I'm all for rebuilding bullpens year over year, but there's reason to believe each of them could be even better next season. So, Ben, kind of two questions there about Sagacey and maybe just the bullpen for next year. What do you think?
He seems to be, about as advertised at the time of the trade that brought him to the organization, where he's probably a utility player with good bat to ball skills. I have been a little disappointed with some of his misplays, both mentally and physically, on the field and the base paths this year. So hopefully
Yeah.
that those are areas that he can work on in the offseason and clean up a little bit. But he's your right-handed bat to ball utility player, and he's going to have some good years where people are going to say he should be starting, and then he's probably going to have some down years where everyone's fine with him on the bench. So I don't know. What is your impression?
Oh, right in line with you. I might say he's a poor man's Tommy Edman. Um, they're slightly different, but I would take Edman as a utility man myself because Edman gives you plus defense at two up the middle positions. Sagacey looks like he's probably going to be a better hitter, not like not great, and Edman's not terrible, right? So it's a small degree of difference. But Sagacey looks like he'll probably be a better hitter. But I would certainly take a utility player who can give you that plus defense over right-handed bat, which is not as difficult to find. But even so, he's still a valuable player. These guys that can play multiple positions, are very valuable, especially when you have them under those team control years. Yeah, I think we're seeing that promise, and that's about what we should expect going forward. Bullpen, Ben, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, 2 months, a bullpen can do just about anything over 2 months. I mean, look at the 2006, St. Louis Cardinals. The entire pitching staff looked like a dumpster fire, and then they were good for 1 month. And then if you single out, like the Tyler Johnsons and the Josh Kinneys in that bullpen, those are guys they did not have long, illustrious careers with the St. Louis Cardinals. They had a magical run over a short period of time, and we will forever be grateful for that. But I don't think that we read much into their overall skill from that run. And so I would be careful. I think Jojo Romero, with the adjustments he's made, um, I think he's a good reliever. And he can be very good in stretches, but he can also have, an April like the April he had, which was horrendous. So I look at these guys, I think there's good stuff. Um, eh, Leahy, I don't think really strikes out enough people to be a lights out reliever. And Alcala, there's no reason to believe he's not going to start walking people again. And so I just look at it. I think I believe you are the one who refers to relief pitchers as cattle. And,
Yes, I do.
it's been a good run for the cattle, and hopefully they get a few more cows to throw into the mix next spring.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if Mink is referring to about rebuilding bullpens every year over year. And I've just often talked about yeah, these guys are totally replaceable, etc. But that said, that doesn't mean that you dump them necessarily. And so and the positive thing here is these are pretty much all guys. I think Alcala probably, I don't know if he's, I think it was like maybe on a free agent deal or a minor league free agent deal, or so. I don't know what his contract status is coming in here, but oh no, because they signed him off waivers, didn't
Yeah.
they?
Yep.
Anyway, doesn't matter. My point is, if these guys aren't like approaching free agency, or they're not like going into like arbitration and salary jumping or things like that. Yeah, you absolutely keep them because, like you said, they'll be part of your group of cattle for next season. And it is always exciting to have just more guys because it's basically quantity over quality is what you need in a bullpen. So and again, I think this year's just really proven that just the fact that they traded away with Maton and Helsley and Matz too, who has is good bullpen arm as bullpen arms go this season, and it really hasn't impacted the bullpen at all. So, and I think that's more the rule than the exception.
And I think the names that we're even talking about, who they traded away, who were their best relievers, like Helsley was a bit of a letdown this year. He wasn't as good as last year. And then Maton was someone they signed, very late into the free agent period, right on the cusp of spring training, or maybe even after pitchers and catchers reported. And then Matz was just whatever innings you get from him, great. And
Yep.
so like
Yep.
they kind of proved the rule as well. Hey, these guys panned out. They were able to trade them away and not lose much. And it this season, I think, more than many, has proven the accuracy of your philosophy towards bullpens. Um, DeWallet Inspector asks Garrett Hampson DFA exclamation point. He actually just exclaimed. He didn't ask.
Yes.
How does he rank among the Mozeliak scrap heap bench jobbers over the second half of his tenure?
Garrett Hampson, like at this time next month, Ben, I will not remember that Garrett Hampson was on the St. Louis Cardinals ever. Um, he didn't do anything on the field, but he also didn't have, any je ne sais quoi, right? He was just pretty forgettable. I don't think he can hold a candle to Taylor Motter, who for me is just the ultimate avatar, late period Mozeliak jobber. This is a guy, I believe it was his age 33 season. And, in his previous seasons, I think he made the majors at 27 and basically had as many minor, more years that he wasn't in the majors than was in the majors between then and the Cardinals. They actually gave him the second most major league plate appearances of any point in his career at age 33 with no real evidence of anything aside from like his, bat speed was pretty good. And didn't they even try him at shortstop a little bit? Didn't he play
Yes.
just a little bit of shortstop?
Yes. I think he was like the Aaron
I mean,
Miles. We're just going to put him everywhere.
yeah. Oh, 100%. And the hair, right? He had some great salad, the style. I mean, I don't know. I would consider getting a Taylor Motter tattoo. That's how much I respect him as a jobber. Ben, what about you? Thoughts on late period Mozeliak jobbers?
It's very, very, very difficult to argue with Motter. As you said, uh, there's also, I think, though, uh, the feel good nature of that. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's old. He's getting one last crack at the minors, or excuse me, at the majors. He spent a lot of time in the minors, and so there's also kind of that, like, he saw it through, and good for him. Um, I'm gonna also throw in there good old Trace Barrera. Um,
Yep.
like just uh, one of the things that I feel like he represents is the three catcher tendency. Like,
Yes.
how they were carrying too many catchers. And so, in terms of being an avatar of the late Mozeliak era bench jobbers, I feel like he is very emblematic of that. And it's just something that I feel like everyone was just like openly kind of making a joke out of, like even national baseball types. Like, why do they have three catchers? Who is this guy? Like,
Right.
what's going on
Well, yeah,
here?
and he was like signed to be the third catcher.
Yeah.
Like
And it was after they had thrown Contreras, their huge free agent signing, under the bus. Just a a ridiculous set of circumstances all around, and you know, really amazing to me that they spent that much of the DeWitt's money, and then they all kept their jobs for like 2 years. It went south
Yeah.
in 6 weeks of the season, or less than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And now they've all kept their jobs for 2 years after doing that. It's really astounding. So I think Barrera's got to be pretty high on that list just because of how he came to be in the mix.
Yeah, I agree too. One last thing I'm going to say about Mater that I think makes him kind of unique in the jobber conversation too is, Barrera, Hampson, a lot of these guys, they're guys that were signed in season, or like somebody else, put them on waivers and they
Yeah.
picked them up. And I feel like, yeah, there's always a little bit of a, I'll allow that there just because like, a gap opened up and you filled it. Taylor Mater they signed in the off season, so Taylor Mater was like, and they thought they were going to be competing that season, so they didn't necessarily plan to give him the amount of playing time he ended up having, but he was like in their plans for the season. And also, I just have to say, every time I think of the moment that they signed Taylor Mater, I picture Jake Taylor waking up in the bed in Mexico, getting the call from the Cleveland Indians in Major League. It just feels like that had to be 100% the call that Taylor Mater got.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. That very cinematic. Uh,
All right. Guth Sports says, I'm thinking of putting together a book of letters to celebrate Mo. What would you write to him and what drawing would you include around it? Ben, how are you going to contribute to this book of letters for Mo?
um, I think that mine would definitely be framed in the positive, because something that I think that we have all lost track of is how awful the last like 2 months of the 2006 season was. Like it was really terrible. And the Cardinals barely snuck into the postseason, and then they caught magic in a bottle and had that wonderful run to win the World Series. And Walt Jocketty and ownership's lesson from that was to try to run it back primarily with the group they had. like and 2007 was an absolutely terrible year. And then we come to find out that actually the front office is involved in an NWO style feud of like, Jocketty being Hollywood Hogan and Lunau being like the outsiders, like, and there's huge animosity, and it got so bad that DeWitt fired Jocketty, not really so much for the results of 2007, but for the internal strife. And then they had to find a new general manager, and they settled on Mozeliak. And I have to say 2008 was a good like foothold season in the way he cobbled that roster together, and then put the team on the track to having that great 2009 season that had the terrible ending, and but also was able to lead the front office and bridge the gap between the holdovers that Jocketty hired and the new blood that Lunau had brought in, and that led to one of the best runs in franchise history. And so I really think like the beginning of his tenure is something that I would focus on, because that was very rough, and that could not have been an easy situation to walk into and come out on top of. So I think I would focus on that, and then probably sneak something in there about getting high on your own supply, and what in the world were you doing here the last 6 or 8 years. What about you, Ben?
Well, Ben, you did sidestep the part of the question about the drawing. So I'll let you think about the drawing you're going to include, because we all know now that is an important part of a book of letters. I'm going to start there and say my drawing is going to be an outline of John Jay and his batting stance. That's what I'm going to go with for my outline. And the text I'm going to write is to thank Mo for the majority of his tenure for putting together extremely competitive teams within the uh, very strict financial constraints of the DeWitt ownership. And I feel like John Jay is really kind of, emblematic of that, right? A guy who like was not great. We were never like, oh my gosh, we love John Jay, but like was just like there year in and year out and like putting like not like certainly not like all-star value but like positive value and filling out rosters with enough Memphis Mafia type guys and then having sprinkling in a Pujols and a Holiday and whatnot here and there and really that's the secret sauce for the majority of his time there. Yeah, I think he kind of lost the plot near the end, but he's I think next to Cashman, the dean of baseball GMs, and like it's a fast changing business, and I think for somebody to maybe you know be in it that long, and then at a certain point not maybe lose a step is completely understandable. So Ben, what do you have a drawing that's going to go with your complimentary letter?
I would probably do a drawing of Torty Craig, because the pet tortoise of Alan Craig, made famous during the 2011 World Series run. Because like everyone in the organization got in on that, including Mozeliak. And I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but then when you fast forward, when Craig got injured in the World Series with the Liz Frank injury, and it was touch or go of
Mm-hmm.
whether or not he would be able to play. Like the day he was cleared to play, Mozeliak wore like a red Vineyard Vines turtle tie, like to the World Series, like for that. And that definitely endeared him to me. So I think my drawing would be Torty Craig with his bat and glove, maybe wearing a Vineyard Vines bow tie for Mozeliak. I think that would probably be my drawing. Um, and I am definitely going back to the glory days here for most of my stuff. But
Yeah.
I feel like we've all gotten so sour on where the organization has been for like the last 5 years or, you know, or
Yeah.
so, maybe a little longer, that this question really caused me to think about the entire breadth of his tenure. And I was kind of like, like it was actually quite impressive until he started robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the player development suffered as a result. That's what my drawing would be. It'd be Torty Craig with a Vineyard Vines bow tie on, with his bat and glove.
Love it. Love it. I think those would both be great. I think if either one of us drew Gersh, I think that would be a solid choice as well. Um, anyway, love that question. Love all these questions. Thanks again to everybody for continuing to tune in. Oh man, I got a couple guys doing wheelies on motorcycles coming down my road here. Oh my god, this is like 15 of them. So wow, crazy. Anyway, just explaining the noises going by. They're still going, Ben. These
Call
guys
the
are still
National
going.
Guard. Call the National Guard.
Let's they'll be here soon enough, I'm sure. Ben, let's wrap things up. We talked about what we learned. What are you going to be looking for?
So I think that you might have peeked at the outline. So I'm not going to do this as a quiz, but um, with Brendan Donovan getting ready to come off of the injured list, I got to wondering, like how his performance has been this year, because he is the team's all-star and he had a great start to the season, and we were wondering if he would maybe get to 200 hits this year, or that was my number to watch. And he's not going to get anywhere near 200 hits. Spoiler. But I was looking at his overall batting line, and uh, the stats that I like to use are weighted on base average, because it uses linear weights to give a value to every outcome. Walks, strikeouts, hits, outs, doubles, triples, homers, all of those things. And so that then is adjusted by weighted runs created plus on a scale where you also include park adjustments, and 100 is league average, and then above 100 is better than average. Each percentage point is that much above league average. So in 2022, in Donovan's first season, he had a 127 weighted runs created plus. In 2023, it was 118. In 2024, it was 115. And this year, Ben, it is 112. So this is a pretty steady decline, in small steps, of course, but a decline nonetheless. So what I am going to be watching for the remainder of this season is whether or not Donovan will have the worst offensive season of his career in 2025, the year he was the Cardinals' own all-star. So that's what I'm going to be watching. What about you?
I love that, Ben. That actually strikes me as almost a friend of the pod, Alex Crisafulli, a chirp of the week-esque kind of thing to look at. Like,
Yeah.
what was the worst season or the worst second half for Cardinals All-Star selection? I feel like that's one that he would look into and would be fascinating. Ben, I am going to be watching Liam Doyle, the Cardinals' first-round pick this last season, who, after getting a rest, pitched at Palm Beach in A-ball, and then the team moved him with the A-ball season ending. They moved him to the AA team, so he's going to get like a few innings there, and I think that confirms for us that. Liam Doyle is very fast-tracked for the major leagues. That's pretty aggressive for a pitcher, for the Cardinals to be doing that. And by the way, in his first appearance for Palm Beach, he faced 7 batters, struck out 3, walked 2, and gave up a home run. So not like even a great, like just brief appearance there, but, it's his first time as a pro. They're unfazed. They, certainly feel like he's up to the competition of AA. So, I think he'll just throw a pretty small number of innings, but, it'll still be fun just to kind of, see him there and maybe just give us an inkling, because I don't know that any of us expect him to like start next season in the rotation, but it certainly seems like, he could end up there if things kind of break right. So I'm going to be watching Liam Doyle a little bit.
And I
would
also,
else? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I would let our listeners know who have MLB TV, with him going to Springfield and them being in the postseason, you'll probably have a pretty good opportunity to actually watch him. Like if you want to, pay attention to the pitching matchups, and you could probably, see him pitch for Springfield here in the weeks ahead on MLB TV in the comfort of your own living room. So if that's something that interests you, give that a look.
Although if you watch that, you'll miss out on the Cardinals game that night. So, I guess, you'll have to make the tough call
decisions,
of what you'd rather watch. Yes. Ben, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, the weather's getting colder. The Cardinals still have a puncher's chance, so there definitely is still reasons to watch and drink in the baseball, because there's not too much of it left to go, so enjoy it while you can.
Absolutely. And again, we've got Thursday off days here through the end of the season, so we will be back with you again 1 week from today on the next Cardinals off day.
Go Cardinals!